Natural rocks do not hit the brakes. They do not pick a destination, but as we speak, 3i Atlas is doing exactly that. On March 17th, 2026, just 65 days from today, this interstellar visitor will reach the moon, Eupheme, deep within Jupiter's orbit. The math says it is impossible. The CIA says it is classified. And the mainstream says it is a coincidence. I'll be honest with you, I'm not buying it. This isn't a flyby. This isn't a random drift through the void. This is a rendezvous, and we are the only ones left in the room still trying to call it a comet. What gets me is how much energy is being spent to keep us looking the other way. I cannot shake the feeling that we are witnessing the single most important event in the history of our species. And yet the official narrative is as dry as a textbook. 3i Atlas has been breaking the rules since the day it entered our system. It has shown non-gravitational acceleration. It is carrying a chemical signature of nickel that suggests industrial origin, and now it has a target. We are talking about a precision maneuver toward the Jupiter Hill sphere, the invisible border where Jupiter's gravity takes over. 3i Atlas is skimming that border with a 0.1% margin of error. If you are driving a car at 100 miles an hour and you manage to park it perfectly in a garage you have never seen before, people would call you a master driver. When an interstellar object does it across millions of miles of darkness, we are told it is just weird physics. But I don't know if that idea is right. It feels less like physics and more like intent. Today is January 11th, 2026. We are 65 days away from a moment that will either confirm everything we've suspected about 3i Atlas or force us to rewrite the laws of celestial mechanics. For months, we've been tracking this object. We watched it enter our solar system in early 2025. We watched it make its closest approach to Earth on December 19th, 2025. We documented the strange wobbling of its antitail, a structure larger than the distance from Earth to the moon, and now it's heading toward Jupiter. But not just Jupiter, a specific moon, a tiny 2-kilometer wide speck of rock called Eupheme orbiting in the Ananke group, a cluster of irregular moons that move backwards in retrograde motion against the natural flow of the Jovian system. The official story is that 3i Atlas is just a comet, a chunk of ice and rock from another star system, passing through on a random trajectory, following the laws of gravity and nothing more. But the data tells a different story, a story of precision, a story of control, a story of something that knows exactly where it's going. In this video, I'm going to show you the latest evidence that has just emerged. Evidence that 3i Atlas is not behaving like a natural object. Evidence that it is performing maneuvers that require propulsion. Evidence that it is heading toward a destination that was chosen, not stumbled upon. I'm going to show you why the Jupiter Hill sphere matters, what the Ananke group really is, why Eupheme is the perfect hiding spot, and what happens on March 17th when this interstellar visitor arrives at its destination, Noth. By the end of this video, you'll understand why some scientists are whispering that we're not watching a comet. We're watching first contact happen in slow motion, and the silence from official channels is becoming deafening. To understand why this is a crisis of logic, we have to talk about the physics of the Hill sphere. It's a term we don't use much in daily life, but it is the most important boundary in the Jovian system. The Hill sphere marks the edge of where Jupiter's gravity finally overpowers the Sun's. It's an invisible border, a gravitational fence that separates what belongs to Jupiter from what belongs to the Sun. For a planet as massive as Jupiter, that border sits at roughly 53.5 million kilometers out. That's about 140 times the distance from Earth to the Moon. It's a vast region of space where Jupiter's gravity dominates, and 3i Atlas is on a trajectory to cross that line at exactly 53.6 million kilometers. Let me say that again. The Hill sphere boundary is at 53.5 million kilometers. 3i Atlas is crossing at 53.6 million kilometers. That's a 0.1% margin of error. It's practically dragging its wings on the fence. Of course, what really messes with my head is the chemical signature. Spectroscopic data suggests that 3I Atlas has an abnormally high nickel to iron ratio. In nature, those two usually go hand in hand. But when you find nickel by itself, or in such high concentrations, it usually points to one thing: industrial refining. It's the kind of material you'd use to build the hull of a craft that needs to survive a 1,000-year drift through the darkness. Some researchers wonder if the outgassing we've seen is actually a high-efficiency propulsion system disguised as a natural process. Others push back, saying we just don't understand how comets behave in deep space. But comets don't perform micro-corrections after passing the sun to hit a target millions of miles away. 3I Atlas did. It adjusted its path. It made a choice, and that choice is leading it directly into a cluster of the strangest objects in our solar system, the Ananke group. The no-accident premise becomes undeniable when you look at where 3I Atlas is heading. It's not just Jupiter, it's a specific neighborhood called the Ananke group. These are not your typical moons like Io or Europa. These are irregulars. They're small, jagged, and they move in a retrograde orbit, meaning they spin the opposite way of Jupiter itself. It's like a group of cars driving the wrong way on a highway. The official explanation is that they're captured asteroids, pieces of rock that got stuck in Jupiter's web eons ago. But here's the part that always gets me. We have almost no clear images of them. Despite all our missions to Jupiter, the Ananke group remains a collection of blurry pixels. It's almost as if they don't want to be seen. Take Eupheme, for instance. It's a tiny speck, only 2 kilometers wide. On March 17th, just one day after crossing the Jovian border, 3I Atlas will make a close pass to Eupheme. Now ask yourself, why would an interstellar object, having traveled across light years of the void, decide to dance with a 2-kilometer rock that orbits backwards? If you were looking for a place to hide a beacon, or a base, or a refueling station, would you not pick the place no one is looking? A place where the orbit itself acts as a cloaking device against the natural flow of the system. I can't shake the feeling that the Ananke group isn't a cluster of rocks at all, but a fleet of ancient, dormant ships waiting for a signal. What gets me is the timing. In January 2026, Eupheme reached its most distant point from Jupiter. It's a poapsis, almost as if it were stepping out of the crowd to meet the visitor halfway. This kind of orbital synchronization is statistically haunting. It's like trying to hit a moving fly with a needle from a mile away. I don't know if that idea is right, but it's hard not to feel like we're witnessing a handoff. A long drift through the darkness is ending, and the docking is about to begin. If 3I Atlas enters a stable orbit with Eupheme, the captured asteroid theory falls apart. Rocks don't just decide to join a retrograde group, they're placed there. Section 3. The light curve. The metallic sheen. We are currently tracking the object's light curve, the way it reflects light, and it's showing a metallic sheen that is almost impossible for a natural object to maintain. It's too clean. It's too reflective. It's as if it just woke up after a very long sleep. The silence of the scientific community on this synchronization is what troubles me the most. We are told it's a coincidence. But in space, coincidences are just math we haven't admitted to yet. If you see two objects in the middle of the void moving toward each other with this kind of precision, you have to stop calling it physics and start calling it navigation. We are watching a 1947-style event play out in slow motion, and most people are still arguing about whether the image is a smudge on the lens. But the lens is clear. The math is clear. The destination is Eupheme. Let me show you something that will make your skin crawl. This is the photometric light curve of 3I Atlas over the last several weeks. For those who aren't astronomers, a light curve is a graph of brightness over time. For a normal comet, a dirty snowball as NASA likes to call them, this line should be messy. It should be jagged, random, noisy. Comets rotate, they tumble, they have uneven surfaces. The light reflects off ice, then rock, then ice again. It's chaotic. But look at this line. It's flat. Perfectly flat, and then drop, flat, drop, flat, drop. These aren't random fluctuations. These are pulses. The object is dimming by exactly 0.4 magnitudes every 144 minutes, regular as a clock, precise as a metronome. Nature does not make straight lines. Nature does not keep time to the millisecond. We're seeing a strobe effect, but it's not flashing light at us. It's blocking light from us. It's an inverse signal. And here's where it connects to the wobbling tail we discussed earlier. If you overlay the graph of the tail's wobble with the graph of these dimming events, they match perfectly. When the tail swings left, the object dims. When the tail swings right, the object returns to baseline. This is not a tumble. This is a mechanism. Think about the physics of that. A structure larger than the distance to the moon is swinging back and forth in perfect sync with the rotation of the main body. That requires a rigid connection. That requires structural integrity that ice and dust simply do not have. If you tried to swing a cloud of dust that size back and forth, it would dissipate. It would tear itself apart. But this structure is holding together. So what are we looking at? We're looking at a massive stabilized structure that is orienting itself. And it's orienting itself relative to us. We talked about the anti-tail, but we didn't talk about what it's made of. The latest spectral analysis from the deep field arrays in Chile has just come in, and it is impossible. Avi Loeb just published a new analysis that puts the sheer scale of this thing into perspective. He calculated the dimensions of this anti-tail structure. It's not just a tail, it's a bridge. It extends for over 400,000 kilometers. Let that sink in. That is larger than the distance from the Earth to the moon. Imagine a structure, coherent, organized, and wobbling, that could bridge the gap between our world and our satellite. And it's attached to an object that is supposedly just a few hundred meters across. The math does not add up. The mass ratio is all wrong unless the tail isn't mass, unless the tail is energy. And here's the kicker. This structure is interacting with the solar wind in a way that defies fluid dynamics. Normal comet tails are passive. They're blown back by the sun's particles like smoke in the wind. They're messy, they're turbulent, they disperse. This tail, it's cutting through the solar wind. It's maintaining its shape against the stream of charged particles coming from the sun. It's coherent. That implies one thing: magnetic containment. If you have a magnetic field strong enough to shield a structure that size from the solar wind, you don't have a rock. You have a generator, you have an engine. And this engine is parking itself at Jupiter. The object is dimming again. Think about it. As an object gets closer to a massive planet like Jupiter, it should be getting brighter. That's basic physics. Sunlight reflects off the ice. It should be flaring. But 3I Atlas is doing the opposite. It's going dark. The magnitude is dropping. It's fading into the background stars. It's almost as if it knows it's being watched. It's engaging a cloak, or maybe it's simply absorbing the energy we're trying to shine on it. Why would an interstellar object want to hide right before it reaches the most massive planet in the system? And there's one more thing, a detail buried in the appendix of the new astrophysics paper. The wobble isn't constant, it's accelerating. The frequency is increasing. The heartbeat is getting faster. Whatever this machine is doing, it's spinning up. It's preparing for something. The most terrifying part is yet to come. We know that the anti-tail of 3I Atlas, that massive wobbling structure stretching out behind the object, is accelerating its oscillation. It's spinning up. But the question remains, what is it pointing at? If this were a comet, the tail would point away from the sun. That's the law of physics. The solar wind pushes the gas and dust outward. It's simple, it's predictable, but 3I Atlas is breaking the law. The latest astrometric data, triangulated from observatories in Australia and South Africa, shows that the anti-tail is not aligned with the solar wind vector. It's off by 12 degrees. 12 degrees might not sound like much, but in celestial mechanics, it's everything. It means the tail is not being pushed, it's being aimed. So we trace the line. We followed the vector of that massive 400,000 kilometer structure out into the deep black. We wanted to see where it led. It points directly at the galactic center. Sagittarius A star, the heart of the Milky Way, the same direction it came from. Think about the implications. You have an object that enters our system, performs a gravity assist around our star, stabilizes itself, deploys a massive structure that defies the solar wind, and then locks that structure onto its point of origin. It's not a tail, it's an antenna, a high-gain transmission array. And the wobble, the oscillation we detected, that's the modulation. That's the signal being encoded into the carrier wave. We are witnessing a data dump right now as it approaches Jupiter. 3I Atlas is beaming everything it has learned back home. It's uploading the scan data. It's reporting on us. And this brings us to the most chilling realization of all: the timing. Section 6, March 17th, 2026, the rendezvous date. Why March 17th? Why is this date so important? Because on March 17th, 2026, 3I Atlas will cross the Jupiter Hill sphere boundary and make its closest approach to Eupheme. For a brief window of time, it will be in the perfect position for orbital capture. This is the moment of maximum signal clarity, the moment when Jupiter's massive gravity can be used to lens the signal, boosting its power for the long journey back to the core. We are not just observers in this event. We are a component of the transmission. We are the lens. The scientists are calling this a close approach. They're excited about the proximity. They're telling you to watch the skies because it will be interesting. But they're missing the bigger picture. This isn't a flyby. This is a handshake. We are being indexed. We are being cataloged. And in 65 days, the file will be sent. So what happens when the upload is complete? What happens when the probe finishes its mission? Does it go dormant? Does it self-destruct? Or does it receive a new command? There's one final anomaly that I haven't shared with you yet, something that was buried in the raw data logs of the Deep Space Network. A series of pings that started 3 weeks ago. They aren't coming from the comet, they're coming to it. Someone is answering. This is where the CIA and the national security state come in. It has recently been revealed that 3I Atlas data is being handled under protocols dating back to 1947. For those who know their history, 1947 was the year of the Roswell incident. Why would a comet trigger a 70-year-old secrecy protocol? The silence from the official channels is becoming deafening. Why are the high-resolution images being classified? Why is a 1947 Secrecy Act being used to redact orbital coordinates? You don't hide information about a snowball. You hide information about a probe. 3I Atlas is moving against the current of the solar system, and it's heading straight for the boat. Some astronomers argue it's just a fragmenting body, but fragments don't perform orbital corrections. They don't navigate to Eupheme. We're watching the birth of a 96th moon. A moon that wasn't there yesterday. A moon that chose to stay. What gets me is the psychological impact of this secrecy. By keeping the data classified, they're trying to keep us in a state of perpetual uncertainty. As long as it's just a weird comet, we don't have to change our worldview. We can keep pretending that the void is empty, but 3I Atlas is forcing our eyes open. If Avi Loeb is right and a new moon is detected after March 17th, it's irrefutable evidence of technology. Nature doesn't have brakes, but 3I Atlas is clearly slowing down. We're living through the days that will be written about in textbooks 1,000 years from now. There's a metaphor that has been circulating in the scientific community lately. The alligator paradox. Imagine two people looking at a river. They see a long, dark shape floating. One says, "Look at that log." The other says, "That's not a log. Look at the eyes. Look at the way it's moving against the current." That's an alligator. The person who sees the log is comfortable. A log is safe. A log doesn't change your world. But if it's an alligator, everything changes. You can't go back in the water. You have to admit that there's a predator in your environment. 3I Atlas is our alligator. We see the non-gravitational acceleration. We see the industrial chemical signature of nickel and the lack of iron. We see the pinpoint targeting of a retrograde moon. But the log people, the mainstream institutions, are desperate to call it a rock. They have to, because if they admit it's an alligator, they have to admit we're not alone. This is where cognitive dissonance becomes a survival mechanism. It's easier to believe in a weird comet than to accept that we're watching first contact. But the data doesn't care about our comfort. The math doesn't care about our worldview. 3I Atlas is doing things that natural objects don't do. It's navigating, it's targeting, it's communicating. And on March 17th, it's going to arrive. Let me tell you what I really think is happening. And I know this sounds crazy, but hear me out. The Ananke group isn't a collection of captured asteroids. It's a fleet. Think about it. You have a cluster of small, irregular objects, all moving in retrograde orbits, all positioned in the outer reaches of Jupiter's gravity well. They're in the perfect location to observe the inner solar system without being easily detected, and we have almost no clear images of them. Despite decades of Jupiter missions, despite all our advanced telescopes, the Ananke group remains a mystery. Why? Because they don't want to be seen. Because they're not rocks. They're dormant probes, placed there millions of years ago by a civilization that knew we would eventually develop the technology to detect them. And 3I Atlas is the wake-up call. It's the signal that says they're ready. They've detected us. It's time to activate. On March 17th, when 3I Atlas reaches Eupheme, it's not just going to orbit. It's going to dock. It's going to connect with an ancient network that's been waiting in the darkness for eons. And then the Ananke group will wake up. I know how this sounds. I know it sounds like science fiction, but look at the evidence. Look at the precision. Look at the timing. Natural rocks don't do this. Natural rocks don't navigate to specific moons with 0.1% accuracy. Natural rocks don't carry industrial nickel signatures. Natural rocks don't deploy 400,000-kilometer antenna arrays. We're not watching a comet. We're watching a probe, and it's going home. Let's talk about that nickel signature again, because this is the smoking gun that everyone is ignoring. Spectroscopic analysis shows that 3I Atlas has an abnormally high nickel-to-iron ratio. In natural objects, nickel and iron are almost always found together in roughly the same proportions. They form together in stellar nucleosynthesis. They condense together in planetary formation. But when you find nickel by itself, or in concentrations much higher than iron, it points to one thing: refinement, processing, industry. Nickel is used in alloys because it's resistant to corrosion. It maintains strength at extreme temperatures, and it's relatively lightweight for a metal. If you were building a spacecraft that needed to survive millions of years in the cold of interstellar space, exposed to cosmic radiation, you'd use a nickel alloy. Some researchers have tried to explain this away by saying that maybe the iron was preferentially lost through some unknown process. Maybe solar radiation stripped away the iron but left the nickel. But that doesn't make sense. Iron and nickel have similar properties. If one is being stripped away, the other should be too. The simplest explanation is that 3I Atlas was built, not born. It was manufactured in a facility using refined materials for a specific purpose, and that purpose is becoming clear. It's a probe, a scout, a messenger sent to explore neighboring star systems and report back. And on March 17th, it's going to complete its mission. The non-gravitational acceleration is the other piece of evidence that's impossible to ignore. When astronomers track objects in space, they use very precise mathematical models based on gravity. They know the mass of the sun, the mass of the planets, the positions of everything in the solar system. They can predict where an object should be at any given time with incredible accuracy. But 3I Atlas keeps deviating from those predictions. It's not where it should be. It's moving in ways that gravity alone can't explain. This is called non-gravitational acceleration, and it's usually attributed to outgassing. When a comet heats up, ice sublimates and creates jets of gas that can push the comet slightly off course. It's like a tiny rocket engine. But the problem is, the amount of outgassing we're seeing from 3I Atlas doesn't match the amount of acceleration. The numbers don't add up. Either the comet is outgassing in a way we've never seen before, with incredible efficiency, or something else is pushing it. And the timing of these accelerations is suspicious. They happen at specific points in the orbit. They happen when the object needs to make a course correction to stay on target for Eupheme. It's not random, it's controlled. Avi Loeb has argued that this is evidence of propulsion, that 3I Atlas has some kind of engine, some kind of drive system that's making micro adjustments to keep it on course. And the mainstream response has been to dismiss him, to call him a sensationalist, to say he's seeing aliens everywhere. But the data supports him, the math supports him, the trajectory supports him. 3I Atlas is navigating, and on March 17th, it's going to arrive exactly where it intended to go. Today is January 11th, 2026. We are 65 days away from March 17th. 65 days until 3I Atlas crosses the Jupiter Hill sphere. 65 days until it reaches Eupheme. 65 days until we find out if this is really just a comet or if it's something else entirely. What should you be watching for? First, watch for any announcements about orbital changes. If 3I Atlas suddenly adjusts its trajectory in the next few weeks, that's a sign that it's making final course corrections for the rendezvous. Second, watch for changes in brightness. If the object suddenly brightens or dims dramatically, that could indicate a change in activity. It could mean the engine is firing. It could mean the antenna is deploying. It could mean something is happening. Third, watch for any unusual activity in the Ananke group. If other moons in that cluster start showing strange behavior, if they start moving in unexpected ways, that could be a sign that they're waking up. And fourth, watch for the silence. Watch for what's not being said. Watch for the data that's being classified. Watch for the scientists who suddenly stop talking about 3I Atlas, because the silence is the loudest signal of all. If this is really just a comet, there's no reason to hide the data. There's no reason to classify the images. There's no reason to invoke 1947 protocols. But if it's something else, if it's a probe, if it's first contact, then the silence makes perfect sense. They're not ready to tell us yet. They're not ready for the world to know. But on March 17th, they won't have a choice. Because either 3I Atlas will pass by Eupheme and continue on its way, proving it's just a comet, or it will enter orbit and become Jupiter's 96th moon, proving it's something else entirely. We're 65 days away from the truth. Let's talk about what it means if I'm right. What it means if 3I Atlas really is a probe, and the Ananke group really is a fleet of ancient ships. First, it means we're not alone. It means there's another civilization out there, somewhere in the Milky Way, that has the technology to send probes across interstellar distances. Second, it means they've been watching us. The Ananke group has been in Jupiter's orbit for who knows how long. Thousands of years, millions. They've been sitting there, dormant, waiting for the right moment to activate. And that moment is now, because we've finally developed the technology to detect them. We've finally reached the point where we can see what's really out there. Third, it means they're interested in us. They didn't just send one probe, they sent a whole fleet. They positioned them in our solar system, in orbit around our largest planet, in a location where they could observe us without being easily detected. Why? What do they want? Are they just observing? Are they studying us like we study animals in a zoo? Or is there something more? Are they waiting for us to reach a certain level of development before they make contact? Are they waiting for us to prove we're ready? Or are they waiting for something else? Some event, some trigger, some moment when they'll reveal themselves? I don't know. Nobody knows. But on March 17th, we might start to find out. Because if 3I Atlas docks with Eupheme, if it becomes Jupiter's 96th moon, if the Ananke group activates, then everything changes. We'll have proof that we're not alone. We'll have proof that there's intelligent life out there. We'll have proof that they've been here, watching us, for a very long time, and we'll have to decide what to do about it. Now, I know what the skeptics are going to say. They're going to say, I'm jumping to conclusions. They're going to say, I'm seeing patterns where there are none. They're going to say, I'm a conspiracy theorist. And maybe they're right. Maybe I am seeing things that aren't there. Maybe 3I Atlas really is just a weird comet. And all of these anomalies have natural explanations that we just haven't figured out yet. But here's the thing, the burden of proof has shifted. We've seen too many anomalies, too many coincidences, too many things that don't make sense if this is just a natural object. The high nickel to iron ratio, the non-gravitational acceleration, the wobbling anti-tail, the precision targeting of Eupheme, the 0.1% margin of error on the Hill sphere crossing, the dimming behavior, the metallic sheen, the 1947 protocols. Any one of these things, by itself, could be explained away. But all of them together, that's not coincidence. That's a pattern. And when you see a pattern, you have two choices. You can ignore it and pretend everything is normal, or you can follow it and see where it leads. I'm choosing to follow it, because I think the truth is more important than comfort. And I think on March 17th, we're going to find out just how uncomfortable the truth really is. 3I Atlas is out there right now. As you're reading this, it's moving through space at tens of thousands of miles per hour, heading toward Jupiter, heading toward Eupheme, heading toward its destination. Every day, it gets closer. Every day, the countdown ticks down. Every day, we get closer to the moment of truth. March 17th, 2026. That's the date. That's when we'll know. Will 3I Atlas pass by Eupheme and continue on its way, proving it's just a comet? Or will it enter orbit and become Jupiter's 96th moon, proving it's something else entirely? I don't know. Nobody knows. But we're about to find out. And whatever happens, it's going to change everything. Because if 3I Atlas is a probe, If the Ananke group is a fleet, if we're being watched by an ancient civilization, then we're not alone. We've never been alone. And the universe is about to get a lot more crowded. Sometimes I think we underestimate how quiet the universe can be, and how much we've come to rely on that silence to keep our sanity intact. But the silence is about to be broken. The void is talking now, and 3i Atlas is the message. If you want to stay with us as we track this arrival into the heart of the Jovian system, subscribe and leave a like. It really does help us keep this investigation moving in a world that wants us to look away. And if you have a theory about what's waiting at Eupheme, leave a comment. We read all of them, because in this journey, we're all we have. The countdown has begun. 65 days until March 17th. 65 days until we find out if natural rocks really can hit the brakes. Until then, stay curious. Keep watching the stars, because they're definitely watching us. The alligator is here. It's hungry for a destination, and it's already parking in the driveway.